Hey, S2 folks, it's Mike Hosper here again, one of the pastors here at Sojourn. Over the last several weeks, we've been talking about various disciplines and practices that we can do that allow us to experience intimacy with God and experience His grace. The idea is simple. We do certain things that put us in a place where we experience Him. And it's not something where we're trying to earn His favor. It's not something where we're trying to get brownie points. It's simply a chance to enjoy the grace that He's given us through His presence and His Spirit. And today we're going to talk about one more practice that we want to take on, and that's the practice of service. In some ways, this is the easiest one for us to pick up, even in a time of COVID and social distancing. You have the space and you have the time to love and to serve others. Serving others allows us to walk right in Jesus' footsteps. In Matthew chapter 20, verse 28, we read, "The Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give His life as a ransom for many." Paul actually tells us in the book of Romans that we're living sacrifices, that we're meant to give our whole lives away. So I want you to ask yourself, when's the last time you did something for somebody else and you didn't ask for any credit? I think there's actually a parallel concept here from a verse we looked at a few weeks ago when we looked at fasting. It comes from Jesus' teaching on the Sermon on the Mount. Matthew 6, it says, "But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you." There's something about the spiritual life that when we do things that are just between us and God, we experience a reward. But what does that mean? Does that mean we get an extra star in our crown when we get to heaven? Does that mean that He's going to do us a favor because we did Him a favor? No, doesn't mean that. The reward we experience is intimacy with God Himself. Think about moments that you maybe have shared with somebody else that have been powerful and intimate moments. Maybe it was a time when you were on a vacation, a time you bonded with your mom or your dad, a time you and a friend went out and had an adventure, a time when you and maybe a brother or a sister bonded over a movie or a meal or something like that. The experience itself is its own reward. That's what Jesus was talking about here. Your reward isn't some material good. It's an experience of intimacy with God Himself. So look for an opportunity to serve somebody. Do something without being asked to do it. Do something that makes life a little easier for somebody else. When we hear this kind of thing, we often think in grandiose terms. We think about going overseas and serving as a missionary, or we think about going to a soup kitchen, and all of those things are great. But for most of us, learning to serve is going to start at home. It's going to start with something simple. Do the laundry, do the dishes, do something without being asked, do something without maybe even being noticed. It's okay if you're noticed. It's okay if somebody thanks you for it, but you didn't do it for that. You did it to experience the intimacy with God that comes from loving and serving other people. When we started these recordings, Seth gave us 3 images to work with to think about what it means to walk with God. And the first image is that of a speedboat. A speedboat's just plowing through the water, going its own way, doing its own thing. The second is a raft, and a raft is just tossed around by the currents around it. Instead, we're invited to be like a sailboat. We attend to the winds, and we attend to what God's doing, and we follow Him in that unique way. That's the opportunity that you have in front of you. Pay attention to what opportunities God is giving you now to serve and love those around you. And your reward will be intimacy with Him.